So I've been asked before, Lithius, what is your favorite genus of plant? And my answer has always been, and I think will remain to be, Anthurium. I just love them. I love the variety. I especially love velvet leaf anthuriums. They do something to me that other plants just don't. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you every single one of my anthurium that I have in my collection, and I'll throw in some care tips for good measure. What is up, my planting people? My name is Lithius and welcome to Roots Ready. So the order of today's video, I'm going to be trying to go off memory in terms of how long I've had each anthurium for. So the order might not be exact, but I'm going to try my best. And the first anthurium that I ever acquired was this one right here. So this is my Anthurium CLARINERVIUM. And I remember, guys, when I first got this plant, I was so excited to have it because I think when I got it was during the pandemic, so 2022. And plant care was all the rage. And I finally found this one for a good price from a seller in the Netherlands. And it was only like £17 versus the £60 that I was seeing it at in other places. And when I got this, I think it had about 4 leaves on there and it had like a new leaf that was emerging. And I remember I tried to put it up on this like shelf thing that I tried to build in my room. And I remember I just heard a massive crash when I was sitting in here in my living room watching TV. Went in and so many of my plants were on the floor. I had this one. I had a queen anthurium actually. The first time I spent big money on a plant. That fell. That one never recovered. It never bounced back. This one lost pretty much most of its leaves. It probably kept like 2 of the original leaves. And just about, right? But now it's starting to pick up its growth and it started to grow. As you can see, there's a new leaf emerging over here. I love that bronze browny kind of color that comes in and that lime green venation. I absolutely love it. And there's another leaf coming up at the bottom over here. Can you see that? Right here near my finger. So that's really exciting to see that this plant is beginning to bounce back. I'm really happy to see what we've got going. And you might have also seen that I've got an inflorescence on this one. So I have attempted to pollinate this one with some forgetii pollen, and I've used the pollen from this to pollinate my Anthurium forgetii. So hopefully we might have some interesting hybrids. It's not a rare hybrid. There's definitely lots of them on the market because both of these plants are very easy to pollinate and to propagate via seeds. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be the first time that I think I'm going to get some seeds off of this if the inflorescence was successful. So here's hoping, fingers crossed. So the next 2 anthuriums I'm going to show you are no stranger to this channel. They're some of my favorite anthuriums that I own. I got them both at the same time from an international seller from Indonesia. And this was all, as I said before, Brexit. And then Brexit came along and it just made it a whole lot harder to sort of import plants from outside of the UK. But I was really excited to get these 2 into my collection. And the first one is my personal favorite, the Anthurium magnificum crossed with the REGALE, or as I like to call it, the Anthurium madrag. I think this should be the poster child for the Roots Ready channel. I absolutely love this plant. And you see over here, we have the main event. Look at the size of this leaf. Last time I measured it, it was 60 centimeters long. It is huge. And we've got a new leaf emerging, which I am super excited about. It's put out 2 inflorescence. The first one that you see over here, I haven't pollinated it, but you can see that it's in the female stage at the moment. But what the plan is, I'm going to let it go into the male stage. I'm going to collect some pollen, and I've set up a relationship with someone on Instagram so I can send my pollen over to them and they can pollinate their plant. I won't tell you what it is. Hopefully it's successful and you guys can come back when we have the hybrid, which I'm sure is going to look really interesting. But believe it or not, this plant is actually the mother plant of that plant. So this over here, you'll see there's a huge chunk in the soil just here So this was the original plant, and I actually cut it off and I propagated the top cutting into its own pot, which it's now super well rooted. And the reason I can't hold it right now is because I've sort of got it in this corner over here in the hopes that I don't have to touch it for a couple of months, maybe until next year, because it's really heavy. It's a lot to move around, so I'm just going to leave it in the corner over there. But this one is just for your reference today. So yeah, as I said, this was the mother plant. I propagated it, and now I have two. So I'm hoping that this actual cutting here, which is actually an offshoot, if I move the moss to the side, oh yes, we've got some roots. Okay, I'm excited now. Okay, so I'll put the moss on here, so you might be able to see just here where my finger is. I'm going to try to take my face out of the shot. There is a little yellow spot, and that is a new root. Now, I've had this plant maybe like this for about I want to say close to a year since I've propagated it, but the actual pup that grows off of the main chunk has never had its own roots. It's always survived off of the chunk and its roots. So I'm really excited. I did put the moss on here just to encourage the advantageous roots to start growing. So I'm glad to see that that's working, which means that I can hopefully soon enough chop it off, and hopefully one of you guys might be able to grow this plant for yourself. So that's my aim. And there are a couple of other nodes that were activated, but because this one is taken off, they sort of stopped growing. So once I cut this off, the other nodes should activate and we should be able to begin the process again. So I've gone on about this plant way too long, so let's move on. But this was the Anthurium madrag. This is my Anthurium radicans cross LUXURIANS, and I got this at the same time as I got my Anthurium magnificum cross regale, and from the same seller, so the same seller from Indonesia. This plant I found was doing the least of all of those plants that I got from that order. Most of them have grown. The other two, which was the madrag and a variegated bow mark, they both, you know, are much larger than what they were before. But this one took a little bit of time to acclimate, and you know, it's only recently started to push out leaves and inflorescence quite regularly. So this is the third inflorescence it's put out this year alone. I have tried to pollinate other plants. I tried to pollinate my CLARINERVIUM with this pollen, as well as my FORGETII. But each time I do that, I notice that the inflorescence on the mother plant tends to die. It doesn't survive. So I don't think this is viable. I will keep trying because the FORGETII, for example, is putting out a lot of inflorescence at the moment because I am feeding it regularly now. But it's also starting to put out some new leaves. So this leaf came out in the last month, as well as this one over here. So this is a nice big, you know, pillowy looking leaf, as well as this one, which I think is still just about hardening off. And then we have some of the older ones which are starting to die back now. But I'm really happy that it's finally starting to get full and bushy, and I can't wait for it to absolutely take over this pot. We can see there's a lot of roots now developing around the base of the plant, which means that it is starting to enjoy life. It's not a super thirsty plant, so it does sit in its reservoir for a very long time before it empties. And most of the time, I don't even wait for it to empty. I will just throw the water out, give it a flush, and replace the reservoir. But yes, this is it. This is the Anthurium radicans cross LUXURIANS. Let me know what you think of this plant. Up next is my Anthurium VITTARIFOLIUM. And I must say, I think this is the trickiest Anthurium that I own. I've had it, I think, since the start of this year. I remember I got it in the winter, and I got it from a seller in the UK, and it was when their store was actually closed. And he actually was really kind in sending me this plant despite it being the coldest part of winter with a heat mat. So I was really pleased to get this one because I always wanted a strap leaf Anthurium in my collection. But I'll tell you guys, since I've had this plant, it hasn't done a lot of growing. In fact, I think the leaves you see on here is probably lost the same amount of leaves in that time. So I've tried different substrates to see what works and what will stick with this plant. When I first got it, it was in a mainly sphagnum moss and bark mix. and it just kept losing its leaves. So I decided to move it out of there into pond, and that's where it stayed for a long time. And the growth just sort of stagnated. It didn't really do much. I did get some nice leaves on here, but in other examples that I've seen on the internet, by the time you have this many leaves come out, this one should be quite lengthy already, but it hasn't done a lot. So I did put it into soil, an actual soil mix, very chunky. I've put some charcoal in there as well. It seems to have really taken off, because since I've put it in there, it's developed so many roots. Can you see that? Let me see. See, there's a big juicy one across there, and it's scattered all over the place. So it's definitely enjoying its life in soil. And I'm hoping that it will start to really kick off into overdrive. The first leaf it put out for me in soil is this weird looking thing. I don't think this is a true leaf. I think this is a modified cataphyll, for example, but it's sort of put it out just so it can capture some some sunlight and photosynthesize. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys posted, but hopefully it takes off, because it's a really gorgeous plant. It's so prehistoric, it's so different, and I would love to have it and display it in its full glory. But for now, this is it, the Vittarifolium. Up next is my Anthurium CUTUCUENSE. Again, this was a sort of risky purchase for me at the time. This is when this plant was super rare, and it was difficult to find this plant unless you knew someone with it. But now I think there's more of it on the market, and the price is starting to come down. So that's a good sign, because this plant is extremely rare in the wild. And my opinion is, if we can sort of maintain a healthy population at home without poaching it from the wild, then there's hope for this plant in terms of its existence. When I got this plant, it had 2 leaves on there. Both of them were this sort of fork shaped leaf. I'm just spilling water all over the place. Unfortunately, both of those leaves have now died and gone away now. So and then since then, it's been putting out just single blade leaves. Quite impressive single blade leaves, actually. But in the last couple of months, it gave me my first trifecta, that fork, that classic CUTUCUENSE look. And then afterwards, it gave me this botched this botched leaf. Look at it, it's only one fork on there. I'm not sure why that is. It could be a nutrients thing, or maybe too much nutrients, not enough. I'm not sure. But I've now got this plant on a moss pole, a lazy moss pole actually. I've just sort of taken a bottle and I've just I don't know what I've done here, guys. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lie to you, but it seems to be working. It's quite sturdy. I tend to moisten the moss twice a week, just to encourage those roots to root into the moss itself, and hopefully give the plant the stability that it needs to keep putting out beautiful growth like this one. As I do with many of my anthuriums that are growing in pond, semi-hydro, I water it when the reservoir is dry. Not so much with this plant, because it does appreciate more humidity in its roots. So before it finishes, I will go back in there and top up that water again. And it just seems to be doing just fine. So I'm really happy with that. The Anthurium CUTUCUENSE. I've mentioned this plant enough times in this video, and it's now time to reveal it. This is the Anthurium FORGETII. And look at this plant. This is a beast of a plant. From when I first got it, the leaves were tiny, maybe 10 centimeters across. They were really small, really beautiful though. Like, the venation on a FORGETII, if you've ever seen it, is like no other anthurium that I own. It might be closer to maybe a crystallinum. Like, the leaves look unreal. They look fake. It's like that glisten in the venation is crazy. It's so shiny. It looks like actual silver in the leaves. It's just beautiful. Not only is this plant beautiful, but as I said before, it is probably my easiest plant to propagate via seeds, via pollination. And I've had 2 out of 3 of the inflorescence I've had have been successful. This is the one that I attempted to pollinate with that LUXURIANS slash RADICANS, and it's now dried up, but I've just left it on here because I've attached this leaf to this stem because it's just sort of hitting the walls of my grow tent. So for now, until it falls off, I'll just leave it. But it is doing a lot down there, as you can see. A lot of new growth, pretty much a steady grower, one of the fastest ones, one of the fastest Anthurium that I have in my collection. So that's really good. The other thing I would say about this plant is that it is extremely thirsty. Honestly, I have to go in here sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And when I do go in there, like, the reservoir is completely dry, which is a good thing. It means that it's really sort of pushing, and it's growing really, really quickly. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited just to keep experimenting with this plant, keep pollinating it, and see what new and wonderful hybrids I can come up with. And that's it. This is the Anthurium forgetii, the one and only, the queen Anthurium, the WAROCQUEANUM. And guys, this is probably my second favorite plant. Sometimes it's interchangeable between this one and the Mad Rag, just because of that beauty. It's like, once the leaf comes out and it looks like this, it's like, oh, it's a contender for a top spot. But then unfortunately, sometimes they don't come out as beautiful, so they drop down the ranking. You guys like that as well? Do you have favorites? They're not children, so it's okay to have favorites. But yes, this is it. This is the Anthurium WAROCQUEANUM. I didn't think I was going to get one of these again when my other one died, but then I found this one again, really good price. I think I actually got this one imported from Poland. When I got this plant, it was quite a large one to begin with already. The leaves were probably around this size to start off with. And now they're just sort of, it's finally growing and in the direction that I want it to, because look at those lobes. Woo! We're finally starting to lobe up on this plant. So I'm really, really excited about this one. I think I've cracked it. I think I mentioned in my last video, I was getting some really crispy leaves. This one was too much sunlight, so it got sunburnt. But in terms of the maintaining that humidity level, just stick a bag over the top of your soil. It's gonna change the game. If you haven't got high humidity, try this. I think it's gonna work wonders. It just helps to retain that moisture, because WAROCQUEANUMs, they really do love their roots to remain moist. Like, they don't like it to get dry. Otherwise, especially when they're putting out new leaves, otherwise they start to crisp up, and you just, come into all sorts of problems. So save yourself the headache and just put a bag over the top. It's not the prettiest, but it's very functional. The Queen Anthurium. It's a tiny one now. This one is my Anthurium regale, just a little baby at the moment. Just a baby. It's just a baby. I got this as a chunk, just a chunk, and I've grown it out. The chunk is not doing too well, so I didn't bring it out. I think it's rotting, but this little seedling here has survived, or the cutting from the chunk has survived. When I cut it off, it only had this leaf, so it has put out this one as well, and it looks a little bit pregnant on the bottom. There's a bit of swelling there, so hopefully we get another leaf very, very soon. This plant is very, very fussy. I can confirm what other YouTubers have said. It does require a lot of humidity, and it's a very particular kind of care that it requires, but mainly it's around humidity levels. If you keep it high, this plant will love you for it. But unfortunately, a lot of us don't have the kind of humidity that this plant would love. So at the moment, the fact that this is in a semi-hydro setup means that it is getting constant access to water in its roots. So as it loses it through the air, through the leaves, it can quickly replace that. So it seems to be okay, all things considered. And yeah, once I have this plant grown up a little bit more, I can come back with a more in-depth and thorough review of this plant. But for now, this is the Anthurium regale. This is my Anthurium VEITCHII, also known as the King Anthurium. This one is still relatively new to me, so I've only had it this year, but in that time, I've had some beautiful growth on this, and we are due to get another one over here. Look at the size of this cataphyll. It's definitely going to be much bigger than this, so I can't wait for that to come out. It's definitely going to make it to the favorites. I'm not sure when that is. It's been like this for a little while now, so I don't want to play around with it too much in case I break it. But this plant is quite a thirsty plant, I should say. Quite thirsty. I have it in a reservoir. Ugh. There we go. So I have it in a reservoir with some wicking string down here as well, just to ensure that it gets all of the water that it needs to keep pushing out new growth and new roots. This plant loves to send out roots. This pot, I've only just upgraded or upsized this pot, and it's nearly root bound already. This plant is crazy. Once it enjoys its setup, it really goes full force, 100 miles an hour towards that finish line in terms of getting those big leaves that we love to see. So this plant is actually quite easy to grow. It doesn't require lots of humidity. I think it's because of that leathery type of leaves, unlike the velvet leaf ones, which I think just require higher humidity levels to unfurl. But yeah, this is it. This is the Anthurium VEITCHII. This is the Anthurium FURCATUM. And this was a wish list plant of mine for a long time. I think Hakuna La Planta has an amazing one of these. And when I saw it, I was like, I need that plant or another one like it. When this plant is fully grown, it has the most delicious looking lobes on it ever. It is incredible how stunning those lobes are. So I finally was able to get my hands on a small one. It's been not a super fast grower, I must say. I got it with just I think I got it with just one leaf. This one, yeah, just one. It certainly was just the one leaf, and it has since put out these three. And this one, you can see, is still hardening off. I don't want to handle it too much, but I imagine it's going to be maybe this size or just a little bit larger. So we'll see how we get on. I can't wait for it to be fully grown to give me those first lobes. And just like with the Regale, when this gets its first lobes, I will be sure to show you guys, because I'm going to be super excited, and it's definitely going to be the highlight of a favorite video. But there's not really much more to report on this plant. I care for it in the same way as I do with most of my other Anthuriums in a semi-hydro system, watering this when the reservoir is low enough, and flushing it out maybe once a month or so. So that's it, the Anthurium FURCATUM. The final Anthurium for today, and the newest one in my collection, is the PELTIGERUM, the Anthurium PELTIGERUM. And this was again on my wish list for a long time, just because of, oh, look at that. No lobes, just that completely round sinus at the top. So gorgeous, so pretty. Definitely gives me Anthurium FORGETII vibes, crossed with VEITCHII, because you can kind of see there's some abs forming on this leaf. And as this plant ages, as it gets bigger, it does start to develop those abs a little bit more, or those ridges. It's quite an interesting one. So it feels like a cross between like an Anthurium FORGETII leaf, that leathery texture, and a CLARINERVIUM. So it's not a super velvety leaf, it's more suede, so it's a little bit harder, but it's really interesting. I just think it's such a beautiful plant, and you will see that since I did show an unboxing of this plant on my channel in my shorts, so definitely go have a look at that. But since then, look at that, guys, we've got a new leaf. Super excited. I'm not sure how large this leaf is going to be. Hopefully this size or bigger. That would be fantastic. But I'm just going to wait and see how we get on with this one, because it's exciting. It really is. I can't wait to see this leaf. A lot of people have said that this plant is difficult to root. When I got this plant, it was in sphagnum moss. So when I took it out of there to put it into pond, I did break off a few roots, but not too many. But since then, look at that. All of those are new roots. So I'm really excited about that, because people have said that this is a difficult or a more difficult plant to root. So I'm really glad that it's doing so well. And I just hope that all of the leaves stay. I don't want to lose any of them, because that would be really, really sad. I would love to have a really bushy one of this in my collection. So we'll see how we get on with this one. In terms of the care guide, I'm not going to say too much about it in this video, because I haven't had it for long enough. I've only had it for about a month now. So once I get to grips with the care for this plant, I'll be back with a full in-depth care guide on this to keep it happy. So that was it. That was my entire Anthurium collection. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know which ones are your favorite. If you're an Anthurium nerd like I am, just want to get your hands on as many of them as possible, almost like Pokemon, let me know in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep planting.